I need Greg to You ready, ladies?
I'd say you stick for me to the top of them. You got out to kind of stay in.
Ladies.
Yeah, no, 2-star general. How do you find time to teach?
Ready, folks? The October 4th, 2016 meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee is now called to order. Can you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Healy, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Alvarado? Here. Mr. Glasbach?
Here.
Mrs. Clarkin?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. McGovern?
Here.
Mrs. Held? Here. Thank you.
Mrs. Healy, can you please recite the calendar?
On Monday, October 10th is Columbus Day, and schools and offices will be closed. Tuesday, October 18th, there will be a school committee business meeting.
Thank you. So we have one individual who signed up for citizens' comments, Colleen Pickering. I don't think anyone.
For the people at home, you do.
Okay. Hi, I'm Colleen Pickering, and I live in North Kingstown, and I teach at Wickford Middle School. And I'm here for some students. I told them I would ask you today. I run the intramural program at Wickford Middle School, and they keep asking me, when can we start, when can we start? And I said, I will go to the school committee meeting tonight, and I will ask them when we can start. So I know there's some controversy with the teacher contract and starting the after-school sports and all the after-school activities and stuff like that. And a little bit, I just want to give you a little bit, too, of what goes on behind that. 3 years ago, when we were up for contract renewal, we went back to work, but we didn't have a contract. So when we started things, they said, oh, well, you'll get paid under the old contract that we're running under, until the new one gets settled. So we started up our after-school activities at school, and then, I don't know when, it was like January or something that the new one got settled. And then at the end of the year when the teachers got paid, they didn't get paid what they were told they were getting paid. Like the basketball coach would have had a stipend of $3,200, so they went back coaching basketball, assuming they had $3,200. But then in the new contract, when it was all settled, the coaches were now paid $2,500. So they took a pay cut without knowing it. The yearbook stipend was $3,300, so the person did the yearbook, and when they got paid $1,800. So they took a pay cut. So I know at my school, it was like, well, how do we know if we want to take it? They were like, we're getting paid. Are we getting the same stipend? And I know there's a lot of talk. I'm in the teacher's room, about is that going to happen to us again or not? So I do know some teachers were leery about signing up for the after-school stuff because we had no idea what was in the contract because we're not part of the bargaining unit. So we had to wait and find out. But we heard that it was kind of going to be settled hopefully tonight, and so we're hoping that we can start stuff tomorrow. The kids at school are asking, and they want me to give them an answer, so that's why I came here tonight, to try to get the kids the answer of when can we start the after-school stuff. Thank you.
It's something that I will address in the superintendent's comments.
We will address that tonight. Thank you. Dr. Auger, do you have a food services operations presentation?
Yes, we do. Trish Coleman is here this evening.
Hello, everyone.
Trish.
And we're going to talk about lunch, because who doesn't like to talk about lunch? I talk about lunch, breakfast, noon and night. And I wanted to give you an overview of what we've been doing here in North Kingstown for quite a while, actually. And I want to give you just a snapshot of what the school lunch program is, the awards and grants that we have received over the last couple of years, alternative breakfast, and marketing to the schools. And the school lunches include, and we started this like 9 years ago. So what we're talking about right now is not revolutionary, but people seem to think it is revolutionary. But we started about 9 years ago, and we just, we're pulling in the reins every year. And we're following the Hungry Kids Food Act of 2010. And every day there's fresh fruits and vegetables being offered. Whole grains, every grain in the lunch program is at least 51% whole grain. If it's not being served. Zero trans fats, salads, salad bars. The dairy is either 1% or fat-free. Baking items rather than fried. We were never frying items. And but people don't realize that, so we have to say it. And just the healthy cooking and the prep techniques that we're using. We're fortunate enough that by being independent, we have people in our kitchens who have honestly been there for over 20 years. And food production was a lot different over 20 years ago, so they were used to doing things from scratch. We changed some menus based on the regulations, some of the recipes themselves, and tweaked them, and we were able to continue with these from scratch recipes that we're using every day. Another thing that happened, because it is such big business, we do just under $1 million in revenue a year, is that the manufacturers got on board because they weren't going to miss that opportunity. And so the vendors that we are using, say Barilla Pasta, Land O'Lakes, Jennie-O Turkey, all these vendors, they have changed their formulations for what can be served in the lunch program. So sometimes when someone is going to see a brand like this being served in the lunch program, it's actually not the same product that is being served in the grocery stores. Same thing with all the cereals that are going on at breakfast. It may be Lucky Charms actually, but we do have a reduced sugar whole grain Lucky Charm, but it's still magically delicious. So we're able to use these brands, and it was interesting because for the last 2 years, I've gone to a conference in Harvard that has to do with healthy minds, fueling healthy bodies. And one of the game-changing conference speakers that I went to 2 years ago was about how we're marketing our menu. Because we're marketing our menu to the parents, but you're also marketing to the student. And so I started last year integrating some of these logos into our menus, along with the little clip art that we use for the younger ages, and it did actually increase our participation. And it's informing the households of what's going on in the lunch program. Awards and grants. North Kingstown is the One in a Melon Award winner for Rhode Island. I have my notes. There's over 5,000 districts participate in the Farm to School Census, and 50 districts were chosen for the One in a Melon. And North Kingstown is One in a Melon because we are One in a Melon. And why are we One in a Melon Award? Well, one of the reasons being, and I can't not mention Alice Hamilton because she just happens to be here for another reason, but the school nurse at Forest Park, they have a veggie program, staff veggie box program. We also have it now at Stony Lane, but Alice has been running it for years, and that has to do with the staff and buying from Farm Fresh RI, which I've been a part of as well, where every other week we're getting these veggie boxes in it. It keeps agriculture going year-round for us. We have the Center of Excellence for Food Safety Research. I was fortunate enough the last 2 years to have the USDA pay for me to go for a week's conference. And this past year, I was at Kansas State University, and the USDA contracts Kansas State out, and it's like a giant food lab, hundreds of acres of just food lab. They're testing water, soil, animal feed. They have a dairy farm, a cattle farm, a pig farm, a dairy. They're selling their ice cream. They're taking it all the way from the ground to the storefront. So I had because water is very precious, and we don't have the water that we're going to need in the future. And so they're studying how can we get the most out of an acre of land with the least amount of water. And it's just exciting to go to something like that where people are just so passionate and focusing on that just day and night, because it is our future. And I just thought, what a great university. I'd never been to one where they had so much going on, where the students were actually butchering animals, and it was just fascinating. Huge university. It was a great trip, and it was completely paid for by the USDA for me to go, so that I'll pass on what I learned. The School Superintendent's Association, we just received an alternative breakfast grant that we are starting next week at Quinnesset, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And because last year we had a RIDE review, and one of the recommendations was alternative breakfast. We all know breakfast feeds kids' minds, keeps their attention, and that's been on the books for over 30 years easily. So what we did was we started a grab-and-go breakfast at Fishing Cove, and the stats here were just showing how the free and reduced participation for Fishing Cove was 37 and 36, unchanged, but the breakfast participation went from 7% to 17%. So we had 10% more children eating breakfast now. And what that calculates out to serving over 5,000 more breakfasts by letting them grab it when they come through the door and having it in their classroom for the first few minutes while the teachers are taking attendance and getting the lunch order. And it also increased our reimbursement $9,000 last year. So that's really something that has turned into a win-win. And with the superintendent's grant, it qualified for Quinnesset to begin a grab-and-go breakfast, which is starting next Tuesday. And more schools are to follow. And now, marketing. We do have money in our enterprise account, and who doesn't like a makeover? And so I'm a member of the Connecticut School Nutrition Association, but I also go to the chapter meetings in Massachusetts because I need to professionally develop myself, because we're the independent district in Rhode Island. So what I found that this company, Love Your Lunchroom, a lot of people are using them. A lot of people have been, I haven't run into anyone in Connecticut or Massachusetts that I asked recommendations for that have not been satisfied with what they do, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to spend some money that we have worked so hard for and spiff up our cafeterias. Questions?
So I would just like to say actually that based on, some difficult decisions the school committee had to make several years ago, but also based on the hard work before that and since then, the food service enterprise account has $230,000 surplus in it as of the end of last fiscal year. So now is the time for us to start looking at things like this, looking at equipment in the future and building that reserve, because that equipment is rather expensive. Those funds can only be, it's an enterprise account, can only be used on the food service program. But Trish and her staff have done an amazing job in making changes and, going with the flow. Trish has had an awful lot of staffing problems just in trying to hire people. It's been incredibly difficult. So even through all of that, they have managed to start these programs and keep them going. So I think that that's really from where that fund was, which that was no fault of Trish and her staff. It's the way the fund was structured. To now have a $230,000 surplus is pretty amazing with all of the factors that are involved in that.
Another, great factor is, but because we have had labor issues, it's just remarkable how the staff that we do have risen to the occasion individually and as a team. They are closer and fiercer than ever, which is awesome. I mean, it's wonderful from a managerial standpoint.
I just want to say thank you very much for doing such an incredible job and really turning this. I remember when this was upside down, and you and your team have done an incredible job and have turned this all around for the benefit of the kids primarily,
Oh.
and the school district. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Glasgow?
To echo what Mrs. Clarkin just said, congratulations to you and your staff for taking what had been a enterprise fund that ran a deficit to one that now actually has some money that we can use to and what is important about it is to reinvest in the program. Because just like a lot of our other district needs, it's wonderful to have funds money within that fund that we can put towards needed equipment and upgrades and things to keep it going. Hopefully as well as it is now and in the future. Thank you again.
I would be remiss if I didn't add. I've said it to you before at meetings. It's just an employee that takes the initiative, that's excited, that's always positive, and basically you've built this whole thing with your staff, and it's just been, you've done a fantastic job, and I just want to congratulate you.
Thank you.
I too would like to thank you.
Of course.
I really appreciate how much proper nutrition relates to child's ability to learn. But do you do any outreach to families to try to educate them about that, about not just giving them food, but the quality of the food, how important it is for children?
Well, one of the things that we do is by purchasing our produce through Farm Fresh RI, they have competition, but they offer nutritional education. And so they go into the elementary schools for like special visits and special speaking like that. They also, there's some nutrition education that goes on the menu itself. We're going to be getting our wellness newsletter back in print this year. And I'm also on the board of the food pantry. And a lot of education, even though it's the same families in many ways, we do about 278 families monthly on average, but it'll spike up to over 400 for Thanksgiving and things like that. But through the Rhode Island, through the food bank, there has been a push for the nutrition education, and we have a recipe of the month. I'm talking about the food pantry right now, but I'm like integrated in this community like that. Whereas we have a recipe of the month, we have all the items. And the recipes themselves are actually, there's pictures of the items as opposed to just words for people who have English as their second language. It shows the item, it's in your bag, it shows the item, it shows the utensils that you need, and it's, really educational at that level.
Yeah.
So it's, one great thing as far as just nutrition education. Just yesterday, I had a call from a mom. She called because she got a letter that she was now going to be reduced. Her family was going to be paying reduced as opposed to free. So she called and she was just disappointed because she said that her husband got a raise. And it was just that tipping point that has thrown them and made them lose some resources. But, one of the beneficial things I think about North Kingstown was I was able to give her all the food pantry information to say, did you know you can get a week's worth of groceries and, this way, and just tell her, just have it all integrated into itself so that she'd be able to. And she had never been there. She knew it. She went by it all the time. But I said, it's all confidential. It's all private. The clients come individually. Nobody ever passes anyone, in the hallway. So we do nutrition education that way as well.
Great.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, well, we pile on, so. But I did want to ask just a couple of questions.
Sure.
So one of the concerns in, sort of moving to the healthier choices, which I understand sort of the rationale, but in terms of, for some kids, this is their primary, or a large part of their caloric intake too.
Yes.
Is that, are we getting, are we sacrificing the healthier choices as opposed to the calories they need, and our kids, even though we have more healthier choices, getting the same level of caloric intake. Especially, I'm worried about the kids who, these are their primary 1 or 1.5 meals for their thing. Because sort of the point nationally is going, is this focused on healthy eating and more weight management stuff, but forgetting that for some kids, there's an important source of calories, and do we trade off maybe it's not quite as healthy from sugar or other intakes, but,
It-
you need the calories too.
Right, and that's completely understandable because we have software that does the nutritional analysis. And when you have half of your plate being fruits and vegetables, you don't have a lot of calories on there. And so it's not unusual for us to add something to get the calorie count up. The other challenging thing with that is you have, the time for lunch itself, how
I was
much
gonna
time
ask
is
you
being
about that,
given.
too.
And then you have loose teeth and braces and all the drama that goes on when you try to give somebody a carrot stick. But we've kind of tweaked some of it. Like if we give our kids raw broccoli, they're going to throw a lot of it away. But we have found that if we just blanch it, it's just soft enough for them to be able to eat it, and it's still a nice bright green. So we're just constantly tweaking it. But the calorie count is challenging. You have the calorie count and the amount of time for the lunch. So,
I was kind of curious, just because looking at the numbers, is the overall participation by the non-free and reduced lunch segment, it seems to me that's trending down, and I don't know if that's a reaction to just the perception of food choices, or do you see the proportions holding steady, and maybe just
Well-
when I look at it I'm just wondering
Well, yeah.
if we're losing some kids just from perception point of like, oh, it's, especially at the high school. And-
yeah, the perception's definitely there. I remember when my own daughter was at the high school and just at the house, she was like, really, Mom? And she had like tortillas and it said whole grain on them. I said, corn tortillas were always whole grain. So there is a perception thing there, but we are, with some of these, with the manufacturers coming on board now, there's some like baked items now this year that we were never able to offer previously that are going to meet the regulations. And, they're definitely they're eating healthy, but they're also been eating healthy all through elementary school. But we do have a bit of a, pushback with the high school kids and on certain items for sure. It's a whole grain pizza. And
some of that has to do with time too. It's really hard to,
Yes.
I know, my stepdaughter
And socializing.
does talk and socialize.
Right, yes, of
She
course.
can't possibly do that if she has to stand in line to get her lunch as well.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very short time frame.
It's not like
Yeah,
we
but-
don't get pushback at home from those same kids.
Right.
Yeah.
And my only question was, I think it's a great idea to jazz up the things, but I just know for some schools we use those rooms for a lot of different purposes, so just to
Right, and
conflict with some of the
Yeah.
other, I
Well,
think it's great that
everything
it's better
would
than being
be-
drab, but
when
I
you
mean-
put an awning, when you use an awning over, say, a serving area, it's only coming out, you can throw a basketball, it's all
Yeah.
gym-proof, I'll call
Okay.
it that
Yeah,
way,
that's-
because that was one of my initial considerations from the very beginning, that we have multi-purpose rooms. And I was just got very specific to, I'm looking at an awning that looks very 3D in a picture. But then when they showed me the material that they're using, it's just coming out and it's not going to come down.
My last question, sorry,
Yeah.
is, we also experimented with the placement of items, because I was reading where, putting certain way they're colored or thing up front tended to, change the behaviors of the students.
Yeah, we use from Cornell University, Smarter Lunchrooms it's
Yeah,
called,
that's
and we've been using Smarter Lunchrooms for years. And my own staff knows color contrast, texture contrast. They are they don't even know probably what it's called anymore because we've been doing it for years. Absolutely. As far as even right now, we just got new fruit displays, vertical dining. It's like a basket that we just put into the high schools, just pulling all the colorful, fresh things up vertically. And so, we've been using Smarter Lunchrooms for quite a few years now.
Great,
Because
thank you.
they have the documentation, they have the data. So it's always looking for, okay, who did it? What were the results of it? And is it sustainable? So,
Great, thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Thank you. Oh, Mr.
Back in
Coach,
2014, right around this time of year, I was invited as superintendent to Washington, D.C. to be a part of the President's Council on Fitness and Nutrition, and only 2 districts in Rhode Island were invited. And I had spoken to Trish at the time about, because I wanted to explain to the community all the wonderful things that are going on. And I was blown away by how much is going on. What a great wellness committee that we have that you lead. It's a combined effort with the nutritional piece, but also the fitness programming that we have in the district. And that's the reason that we were honored, because so much, unique things are happening here that just aren't happening in a lot of other districts. So that's a big commendation to you. Thank you for your leadership on that.
And I just want to leave you with one more warm and fuzzy story, because I forgot to mention it. And that was that Hamilton Elementary had a school garden this year. And tomorrow they are doing one of the big harvests, and they're going to be donating the crops to the food pantry. And then over the weekend, some of the students are going back and doing the second harvest. And we're integrating all those items into the Hamilton Harvest Day on Wednesday. It's been nice to have a school garden that made it through a summer, because that's a hard thing to maintain. And but they did it, and so we're having a big celebration next week. Right? Thank you all.
Oh, Alice.
Oh,
And Trish has been very supportive to me as the school nurse. She has helped get, we've had different chefs come in several years. I had a woman come in that made carrot juice, and we did a whole thing with that. Last year, she helped get a whole food tasting for the kids, and again, I know they get the calories and things, but again, the children are extremely excited. And I know if I stand at that breakfast thing and say, they might come out with their grains and this and that, and just go get a piece of fruit, and they go get it. So Trish has done.
Thank you again. Yes, get the top that.
All right, close line, get ready, everybody.
The pressure's on.
Thank you. So this is just a very brief presentation, just to recall and summarize for you what went on this past summer. So it's pretty straightforward, except the unusual thing about this summer, as you know, was the fact that students did not pay for summer school. So we were shuffling at the last minute, really, to try to determine how we were going to provide some type of support for the kids over the summer, knowing that we did not have the funds to do it. We didn't plan in the budget to have the funds for summer school, because normally that is operated by tuitions, and students pay for the courses. So we were in a situation, due to a legal settlement that put us in a position of having to offer we wanted to offer something, but putting us into a position of not having funding to do these summer programs, at least the first 2 that I'm going to talk about. So summer school at the middle school, this is for students who are required to attend because they have failed subjects. Of course, it's 6 through 8 at the middle level, and we offered English, math, social studies, and science, so just the 4 content areas. And so our solution was to go with Edgenuity, which is a web-based program. We had so many licenses. The company worked with us to give us as much flexibility as possible. For example, we started the middle school program a week earlier than we started the high school program, so that the students could be using those licenses, because you can't be, they're concurrent licenses, so people can't be using them at the same time, but they can be used by various students. And that's a very nice feature about Edgenuity. We don't get that with some of our licensing with other programs that we have. So in other words, if you assign a student to a license, that only that student can use that license. So that is not the way Edgenuity works. And so we were able to get quite a bit of value from the licenses that we had, for minimal cost, I have to say. And so we had 49 students that from our district and 4 from out of district, and all but 2 students who attended passed. we required the students to put in 10 to 20 hours for the courses that they were taking, and the criticism is always, well, that doesn't make up for a whole year, this type of remediation. And it's true. But the other solution is retaining, and that isn't always effective either. The better solution is to be able to provide students with supports all through the school year. I mean, that's the ideal situation. So, and that's what we try to do. But we're limited sometimes with that. And I've got to say, our new devices are opening up incredible opportunities. Today, Dr. Auger and I were touring one of the schools, and the programs, just the range of math programs that we saw in one class alone, but as we went to various classes, students were on 5 different math programs that were helping them to meet their needs. So I think that we're in a real shift as far as some of this is concerned. So I'm pretty optimistic that we won't always be relying on this type of thing, especially as kids learn to be able to progress more at their own pace and have more choice in what's offered to them, in what they self-choice. So for this program, only 30% of the students had completed the work by the end of the summer. So we required them at the middle level, we required them to come in for so many hours, 1 day a week for each course that they were taking. We found that at the end, a lot of the students had not completed it, so the coordinator extended that until the end of July, and then there were still students who had not completed the work in the program, so she extended it through the rest of the summer, through the end of August. And so ultimately, everybody but 2 students completed the work that they needed to do. Her thoughts in her reflections from the report that she submitted to me said that in retrospect, for their age, she would have had them come in more and had more face-to-face time with the coordinators that we had in the program. So we did the same type of thing with the high school, and we included 12th graders as well this year. Last year we did not have 12th grade, to my recollection. So we used the same program, but you can see with the high school we had quite a variety of courses. All the core subjects that you see there, and for the audience who might not be able to see this at home, we had Algebra 1 and 2, Geometry, Pre-Calculus, English 9, American Lit, Brit Lit, Topics in Lit, Earth and Physical Science, Biology, Chemistry, Physics, US 1, US 2, World History, Spanish, and we had Finance, Career Exploration, and Computer Applications. So that's the one nice thing about having a web-based program. You can offer quite a variety. And these students were required to put in 30 hours of time, and they were also required to have 15 hours per course, in a minimum of 3 hours, that's seat time where they came to the school, and a minimum of 3 hours of teacher contact time. So we were hoping that would really ensure success, but and you'll see in the next slide, it's a little disappointing, those students who did not experience that success. And so we had a maximum grade of 70, which was awarded for credit recovery. That's for their transcripts. So there were 134 students enrolled, and 68 of those students did earn a minimum of 1 credit. 20 of those students out of the 68 earned 2 credits, and 2 of the students earned 3 credits. 32 students continue now to work on earning their credits. So that's ongoing. Those who didn't finish have been given the latitude to continue to make sure that they finish. But 34 students were unsuccessful, not making enough progress, demonstrated progress, and so they are retaking the courses. So 34 out of 134 is a high percentage of students that were not successful. So we're not pleased with that. I mean, we did the best we could with this type of programming. Even the coordinator at the high school felt that he would require more seat time with the students. And, the whole point of the web-based programming is for students to be in a position of having the flexibility to do their work at home. But this type of situation and the type of remedial work that needs to be done sometimes needs more face-to-face support, particularly for motivation. So those were the two programs that were affected by the budgeting. These other programs are programs that we run every year, and so there was not the same issue. So for our response to intervention, our RTI program, this is just to mitigate summer learning loss, and we had 116 students who were recommended for this. We had 46 of the elementary students out of that attended, and they came 4 weeks, 4 days a week, in multi-age classrooms. Last year I showed you some pictures, and you could see a range of students that were in the classes. Last year was held at Hamilton. This year we held it at Forest Park. And so the assessments that were used were the STAR assessment, which we administer 3 times during the school year, but we have liberty to use that assessment during the summer for no extra charge. And then we have the Fontes and Pinnell, which is a reading assessment. And so for reading, we had 81% of those tested maintained or increased their reading skills, and for math, 59. And 8 of the students were unable to be assessed because of absenteeism. So we had some conflicts, and the coordinator for this program, in her reflection to me, had some suggestions of how she would do this a little bit differently to avoid conflicts with the summer camps and a few other events that she found interfered with the kids' attendance. Excuse me. The Think Tank program is one of our most successful programs. This is 1 out of 18 in the state that are funded by our Hasbro Summer Learning Initiative, and it is administered through the United Way. We had visitors this year, I'll get to in a minute, but because it is such a successful program, and it is coordinated with the academics that we offer at the school level and a recreation program with the camps from the recreation department for the town. So it's funded through the Hasbro Summer Learning Initiative and the 21st Century Community Learning Centers and the McKinney-Vento. And, of course, the purpose here also is to mitigate summer learning loss. So this is a longer program. It's 6 weeks, 30 days. And we had mixed elementary and middle school, 60 elementary and 13 middle school. And our teachers worked with the NK Recreation Playground counselors and engaged students from both the Yorktown program and the McGinn Park program. So we visited on July 26th. Dr. Ojay and I joined those people from the United Way, and we had visitors from the Johnston School Administration that were planning to hopefully to implement a similar type program. And then we had a local newspaper reporter who took pictures, and we got a little bit of publicity on that. So I'm missing quotations there. Pause for a clause was one of the projects. So they always try to do a service learning project. Last year, if you recall, there was the big lemonade stand was one of the projects. So this year they did the pet stand, and this benefited the North Kingstown Animal Shelter and the Pet Refuge. They also did a fascinating drip irrigation system for the gardens there, and they're growing vegetables there too. And it was fascinating to watch. There were 2 men, former faculty from URI, who helped with this irrigation system. And, the kids actually cut the tubings, and everything was done under the ground, and it was a drip system, and they calculated just how slowly the drip had to be so that they would conserve water, but get it just at the right efficiency so that the plants would be watered. And, of course, when it's underground, it doesn't evaporate, so it's more efficient also. So it's quite a learning experience for them, besides, actually getting their hands dirty and planting and all of that. It was a great project. And then they also did knitted hats for child care for cancer patients, children. So the preliminary results, they do a huge data dig that continues with Hasbro, but the preliminary results showed that we had some successful results. The literacy of 13% stayed the same and 83% improved. And then in math, 19 stayed the same and 75% improved. This was using a pre-test, post-test, and a rubric that is provided by the Hasbro Institute. And then our final program was the extended school year. It's offered every year. This is a huge program, 185 students. So that is divided up. The earlier grades are at Fishing Cove, and the higher grades, 6 through 12, are at DMS. And of course, this is, I think everybody is aware, it extends the 180-day school year for our students who really need to make sure they keep their skills going over the summer. So that's about as exciting as I can make this particular topic. Do you have any questions? Julia?
I have one about the high school summer program. You had said that 34 out of 134 didn't do what they needed to do, and so they had to retake the courses they failed.
That's right.
But there was another 32 that didn't finish, that are still working on it. Are they taking
Yes.
the next course now?
You know, they were in varying degrees of completion over the last few weeks. So they are finishing. Some of them are still finishing up. So I'm
At
thinking.
what point, but they're in their current year courses. Sometimes one course is a prerequisite for another. Like, are they able to do all their existing coursework in the academic year?
Yeah, well,
plus
it varies. It is really a case by case. So the school counselors are tracking all of that. So the whole point is for remediation, obviously, is, to keep them on track. And so if they don't finish on time, rather, if they've got enough work submitted, then they're allowed to continue. So that's kind of.
Limit?
Well, yeah, there is basically a time limit. I mean, if they haven't put any work in, they're stopped in their tracks and retake. But the others, they try to really get them to finish obviously within the first semester. So, if it's maybe not, it's not in time for some of them to take the course in the fall that they might have needed in the sequence. But that's the problem. And that's why that result is overall is pretty disappointing.
It's half. So 66 altogether didn't finish.
Right. I looked at our numbers from last year, and we had much better success rate. But we had some faculty members teaching courses, and this was really I don't want to say Band-Aid, but it really was kind of. What can we do at this last minute? This was really a last minute decision to offer. So at least we had some of those students that we were able to move in their path. Linda?
The response to intervention, is that grant funded also? As well as
I think, I believe that is funded by the district. Mary, would you know the response to intervention is funded, isn't it? We have the coordinator's position I think is grant funded, but I think the teachers are budget, general budget.
and this is general budget too.
Yes, this is big time general budget. Yeah.
I mean, you had to cobble together something. There was nothing you
Right.
could do otherwise. It was last minute. It wasn't anything called through. I had heard from parents that they thought that working on computers for kids that were kind of at risk or already
Struggling.
having trouble was the reason why. And that, more staff were there, and if they had classroom actual experience there, if kids were there with a teacher, I think those numbers would have been, far different, but.
And we used a real skeleton staff. I don't know if you recall back, but I was looking back at the numbers, and we did both middle school and high school program for $11,000, and I believe that included some of the licensing too. So it wasn't just the staff. So that was bare minimum. Any other questions? It's not going to be about broccoli.
No,
Okay.
it's not talking about it. Thanks for giving this. You kind of want to follow up on what Julie plan, but before I get that, on the middle school, you said we had 4 out of districts. So
Right.
do they pay us?
Yes, they did. And actually, we used that money, the coordinator asked us, she knew that we had the extra students come in, and asked if she could hire another staff member to help her with the load.
So I'm wondering, for next year, I reach out to like Compass, since they have a middle school, and I know it's one of their expenses to run a very low-scale summer program that they may benefit from sending their kids to us, maybe a win-win for both. So that might be another source of out-of-districts. I'm just curious, though, to Julie's point of going, at what point do we sort of say that maybe one of the reasons they're not completing is because they know they get extensions? And, for us to sort of, hold their feet a little more to the fire and say, you complete it or don't complete it. But if you don't complete by the state, then, take it again at the high school. Because, giving extensions, part of, you can look at it different ways, but to me, part of the motivation is you don't want to lose your summer time. Well, buckle down during the academic year. And I know there's a lot of, there's a lot of different reasons why maybe kids don't progress on certain courses, but I'm just wondering, it seems a high amount to give extensions to. Then I think that's, if you're saying that's an outlier this year, then maybe we should, it's an outlier. But I think that's something maybe we should look at going, are we a little too liberal in that? And the 34...
Oh, and excuse me for a minute, but one of the things to remember, too, is that we do this type of programming all through the school year as well. I mean, I understand your point over how long do you extend, and some of these may have completed. I will check to see how many of those have completed. At the point when I was first putting this together, which was close to a month ago, people were still continuing. I mean, many of those might have completed by this point. And the other point, too, that I forgot to mention was on the reflection of the coordinator for the high school program. He indicated that there were, I think he said 65 students who did not attend regularly, so attendance was a problem. And they had required that they put in, you saw a minimum amount of hours and FaceTime with teachers, and some of them just didn't show up. So that was a concern.
This is part of the state issue of going, when you make something free, right, and you have less sort of personal
Buy-in.
skin in the game financially, there's, that doesn't necessarily, I think sometimes the state thinks of ideas and forgets that it works counter to maybe what the goal is of the program. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, maybe an outlier, maybe different things, but it just sort of struck me. The 34 who end up retaking it in high school again, my question is, what grade do they get? Do they get the new grade from their retaking the class?
They can't get more than a 70.
Okay, I was going to say, because it's the same,
70 is the max.
same point as the
If
kids.
they get 100 in their summer school work, their grade
what
is
if
70.
No, but if they
what
retake the course,
What if they just retake it in the academic year? Do they get the grade of their academic?
I think they can earn a regular grade then.
Because it seems to me now we've sort of disincentivized, right, taking it during the summer. If you say, why did I put in this work when I could just take it again and get the B?
The maximum is 70
It's
in the
maximum I get a
summer.
70, but I can get an 85 if I wait. I mean, I think we should either,
You lose the option of taking electives that you made. And ultimately, the incentive of that impending graduation that all your friends are going to be at, that's a big motivator, too. You see a lot of motivation happening in the senior year that you may not see in some other years, making it work out.
I agree, but I mean, I would still say the same point is, why wouldn't the maximum credit replacement grade be the same as if they took it in the summer?
Because you're taking the whole course again. But I could see
Right, but we're saying it's credit is
it
credit.
should still show up on the transcript at least that it was the second time.
So
I can check on that.
Or do they both show?
I have to check on that, I don't know.
Yeah, does it grade replace, or does it just show as a new second time taking it? That would be an interesting question to make
Yeah,
on that.
I'll check on those things.
And then, one last question. And then, I mean, again, I think this is great to talk about all this. I would look forward to when we, talk about mitigating summer loss for all our students, right? And hopefully, like you're saying, with the devices and other options we're moving to, that we can really do more for all the students instead of, just the summer math packet you get done 2 days before, school starts. So, which again is really putting an onus back on families and kids too, to extend their own, learning throughout the year. But I'm hoping that, in the future, our summer program discussion like this talks about lots of options for all our students.
Yeah, I think it's going to have a different face.
So, great. Thank all.
I was just going to say, frustrating that the Department of Ed says we can't charge. That was obviously frustrating because that took our options away. But I would just point out that the kids that are at risk and that are maybe needy and that are in summer school are the ones that need the one-on-one time. They already have attentional issues, they already have problems. It's the kids that are, the excelling, or those kids might be more beneficial for them to use the programs that are online because they're self-motivated and stuff. I mean, obviously, we know this. Yeah, we do have.
Well, and I think if we had a little more staff, that might have helped too.
And I think the school committee will have to look at, what we need to add for that because.
And and I don't know if you remember when we did the POC analysis a couple of weeks ago, but when you look at what's happening for our students in 8th grade math that are not our Algebra 1 students in 8th grade, and then they're in the position of taking Algebra 1 with no real support and skill remediation before they get to 9th grade. That's another situation. I know of other districts that sometimes work to have a summer program just for that, closing the gap for those students, and it's sort of like a math boot camp type of thing. Or even in one situation I know where it was actually the recreation department offered courses, and the kids signed up for courses, and they were math courses during the summer. So there are some options, but that is also a need that we've not been able to provide to students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Humber. So we're going to change the agenda just a bit. Can I have a motion to move the school committee approval of the NEANK contract for July 1/16 through June 30, 2019, to the next agenda item?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That being said, can I have a motion to approve the NEANK contract running from July 1, 2016 through June 30, 2019?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
I don't need to walk you through the fiscal impact statement.
Okay.
The fiscal impact statement in your packets, there are 4 items that have a financial impact. So there are a lot of other items that might have a wording impact in the contract, but these were just strictly a financial impact. The first one is that an approval of a salary increase for this union of 2% for each of the 3 years of the contract would be approximately $618,000 in this fiscal year, and that was budgeted 2%. $640,000 in the second fiscal year of the contract, and $660,000 in the third year of the contract. That's approximately $1.9 million over 3 years of the contract. That includes 2% increase to base salary only. It includes FICA and Medicare taxes of 7.65%,
and it also includes the pension on those earnings. And I have estimated those pensions to be in note number 2. The pension for this year, clearly we know, is 13.78%. It's estimated at 13.76% and 13.57% respectively for the 3 years. The second item that has a fiscal impact is that the expiring contract that the teachers have right now have a 45% funding of their high deductible health plan, health savings account. We have changed that to 50% funding for each of the 3 years of the contract. That's estimated at approximately $44,000. That's based on our current complement of teachers. So those were increases. Those are money out. The 2 items that are savings to the contract minimally, we will no longer be sharing the cost of printing the contract. In NEA, we used to print booklets. We used to share the cost of that. The contract will be posted online. None of those contracts should be printed on our copy machines or printers either. And then the last one is there's a stipend that currently staff is receiving, bachelor's plus 30 credits. Anyone who is receiving that stipend as of June 30th will continue to receive that stipend. Going forward from July 1st, that stipend has been eliminated. It's really very difficult to tell who would have gotten that stipend, who would have gotten the bachelor's plus 30. So I really have estimated 1 in each year. The current stipend is $2,015 per person. I estimated 1 in this year would not get it, 2 in the following year, and 3 in the 3rd year of the contract. So it is minimal savings for the contract. So those are the only financial items that are part of the contract.
Thank you, Mrs. King. Dr. O'Shea, did you have some comments?
Yes, I just want to, say that the overall process of negotiation was an amicable one. It did take some time, more because of just scheduling conflicts than because we were at loggerheads or anything like that. It wasn't always smooth sailing. At times things got frustrating, but that's what happens when major contracts are negotiated. So I think we came out in a good place here. We have a number of concessions on certain language that is not necessarily related to salaries and benefits and that sort of thing. But our teachers are competitive, competitively paid in Rhode Island in comparison to other school districts. We're not the highest paid school department by any means, but we're certainly not the lowest either. We're somewhere in the middle, and that's a good place to be. It means that we can attract very good people to North Kingstown, and we have over the years to do this very important work for our community. So, I think both sides working together have gotten to a good place.
Any further discussion?
Mary, and I know, estimates are estimates. I just first point out, if you agree, that the discussion you hear from the general treasurer and stuff about changing the assumed rate of return on the pension or other things may have huge implications in FY18 and 19. So
Especially 19.
yeah, especially 19. So financial impacts and the out years are always a little bit of a guesswork. But I think we should realize that the pension issue, was not really solved. A lot of people were unhappy with what came out, and I don't think it starts to scratch maybe the surface of what we might see, this year, next year, and in 2019. So just need to be cognizant of that. It affects both the district and our employees as well.
Mrs. Avanzano?
Just very briefly wanted to thank both sides of the negotiations, the people that did all the hard work, and especially the people on the school committee that are not paid to do this, and the people who are paid, and to Mary Ann and Phil and the team that was in there. And just wanted to say thank you from another member.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Dr. Roger, do you have a superintendent's
Yes,
report?
actually a couple of recognitions to include in that as well. We don't have, didn't get the information really in time to do a presentation on this this time, but I am pleased to report that the state results for kneecap science have been released, and North Kingstown for K through 12 districts is the number 4 performing in the state, so it's very good. And Fishing Cove Elementary School this year is the highest performing elementary school in Rhode Island, all because they're eating a healthy breakfast. So way to go. So that's a great thing. And Dr. Humbert is going to give another one of her rousing presentations on that at our next meeting. Much more exciting than this one was great too, I have to say. So, and you also have some news on grant.
Yes, so I just wanted to share that we were lucky enough through the efforts of Jackie Trainer and her team to be able to secure the McKinney-Vento grant, which is going to go for 3 years, and it's $40,000 per year. And just so you know that RIDE said that they would only fund 3 to 5 proposals from LEAs. So it was great that we were able to secure that. So thanks to them.
So I also, as officially now in my superintendent's report, I do want to talk about the point that Mrs. Pickering brought up. You know, normally we have a process where we're already posting for, well, you know, when we start in another place. We've had a number of requests, people writing to the school committee asking what's going on with open houses, why are they being delayed, and what's going on with clubs, how come they haven't really gotten going yet, and when will they? And Mrs. Pickering asked that same question on behalf of some students tonight. So normally our process in any given year would, a lot of these jobs for club advisors would take place in the summer, and by early September we would have approvals with the school committee for the right people to, who have, you know, spoken with the principals and gone through an application process to be in charge of clubs, and we get all this going. And nobody notices any kind of delay of any kind because we have a timing mechanism in place that makes it run smoothly. This year, it was the decision of the teachers' union leadership and the teachers' union with them to not apply for those positions, and to not really, the code term for that, I guess, or the educational term is work to rule, but basically not take on anything that isn't part of the mandatory work within a contract. And so this all got delayed, and that is the reason why we did not want to have the open houses, because the open houses are meant for you to come to your child's classroom and to meet with your child's teacher to talk about the program for the year. And if they're not there, it's not really worth having an open house. So we wanted to do it once we knew teachers would participate. Open house is not a mandatory item in teacher contracts, so that's why that was kind of in jeopardy this year. The other piece are clubs. They're voluntary, even though teachers do get stipends for that work. It is not necessarily a mandatory part of a teacher's contract to be here to oversee some kind of a club after school. So the decision was on behalf of the union not to apply for this work. So once, and the offer from the school committee to the teachers union was on the table. The offer that was accepted was on the table on September 1st of this year, September 1, and it was approved by the teachers union on September 26th. Normally this would go much faster. You would have to ask the leadership of the union why it didn't go so quickly this time. But we were done negotiating by September 1. So we got to a point where now we're in a position where everything's on delay. All that work of posting for positions and applying for positions and accepting, and a school committee approval of people in positions, which is required, all has not taken place yet. So it's not a decision of the superintendent to delay things. We want this to get going as quickly as we can, but it's probably going to take a couple of weeks. The earliest most of this can get going is likely to be at our next school committee meeting, because we'll need a school committee approval for people who apply for the posted jobs that are now out there. And those postings are going to look a little bit different because the particular season for that job may not be the same size as it used to be. If it's a 10-week intramural program, for instance, and we've already missed 3 weeks, we have to post it as a 7-week intramural program. So, so those kinds of things take a little bit of, bureaucratic time, and we're going to do the best we can. And I would suspect that, all of the open houses have been rebooked. The high school was on time, but that was a late one in the first place. But the remainder are all going to be happening in the next few weeks, and we expect the teachers will be there and participating fully, and that should be fine. And the clubs mostly will be getting going, in the next few weeks, and a lot of them, I would suspect, right after that approval on our next school committee meeting, which is the 18th of October. So that explains that. That
Thank you.
concludes my superintendent's report. Thank you.
Okay, moving along. Can I have a motion to seal the executive session minutes of October 4th, 2016?
Motion to seal?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I can disclose that there was a unanimous vote taken for those in attendance to approve the district emergency plans pursuant to RIGL 4246, 5A3 for the 2016-17 crisis response plans. Are there any exemptions to the consent agenda? Can I have a motion to approve all items on the consent agenda?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve the school committee approval of the superintendent's goals for the 2016-17 school year?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve the school committee district strategic plan?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mrs. King, do you have any comments on the 2016-17 school budget?
No.
So we have the policy JLCE, emergencies, first aid, medications, and infectious diseases. This is an annual policy.
It's an annual update to our emergency procedures. It's something that's gone over with our district doctor to advise us on keeping these up to date.
Can I have a motion to approve policy JLCE?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Discussion?
So, I just have a concern about the procedure, and I wanted to ask if the people involved in this, which would probably be the school nurses, with the administration, to just look at the paragraphs relating to EpiPen and see if there's anything that we could do to reduce the burden on families that have to provide these to the schools, because many children have to have these available, but don't use them during the school year. And then my daughter was young, I was buying them every year, giving it to the school nurse with her name on it, and at the end of the year, it would get thrown away and they have to buy another one because they expire. They're very expensive now, and so I don't know what the proper solution would be because of prescriptions and such, but if there's something that we can do to reduce the requirement, not for the students that have to carry them, but for all the other students.
I don't know if Mrs. Hamilton would like to join in the conversation here.
They're on the stock list, I think, aren't they? I don't know if anyone here on this table knows. Do you stock them, if you know?
What
Like
we
one in the
have done
clinic?
is, there are certain EpiPens that we have
That are student
not-
only.
That are, they're for unidentified people. And actually, we get them free through a program with EpiPen, like the school doctor writes it, And that's something only like a nurse could give, but you couldn't.
But you have, notwithstanding, you know, notwithstanding, you know, Johnny Smith's EpiPen that's in his box, you have a
I have in my
stocked
school
EpiPen or two.
2 adult and 2 I'm in the pre-K through 5, so I have 2 adult and 2 junior ones.
Yeah,
And
they're on
I
the
get,
stock.
so those 4 come free from their, through a program they offer. And then the company EpiPen does offer reimbursement so that, and everybody would be different, like depending on your copay, where you might have a 0 copay. Like I've had people, and I pass out these coupons every year, and it requires them to go online and sign up. And like I had a parent say to me, thank you, you just saved me $100. But it all depends on your copay and your insurance. So you might save $100, but you might save something different. So I do pass that out myself to anybody, staff included, or if I want you can get your one, so I'll get you one too. Because I do know, and again, that does help with their costs, but yes, this summer has not helped with, but we can't, unfortunately, I mean, I can't keep one that's expired. That would be against my practice. You can, I mean, people can choose to do whatever you choose to do at home when your Tylenol runs out, but when mine runs out, I have to have something come. I mean, I can't do that. That would
It's
be
good to know we have 4 emergencies if necessary. That's the answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're on it.
Do you want to take it?
No, do that.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And I believe that takes us to the end. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, Bob. I didn't hear an aye.
Aye.